These tints have been created to provide a subtle colour shift and add depth of colour to your images or photos. But what is a tint? A tint refers to a subtle colour cast or hue that is applied to an image, and it changes the overall colour balance, adding a specific colour or tone. For example, if I want to do some colour grading and I want to add some warm tones, I would use the tint that would apply those warm tones through the image. The best way is to experiment with the different tints in this collection and see what it does to your image. And each photo or image will be different depending on the colours, the light, and a number of factors. You can use the tints at any time in your workflow. I might use that in the beginning of my workflow when I just want a little bit of colour grading. I could do it through the middle, or I could do it at the end as a finishing touch. It just depends when you want some subtle colour cast or colour tones coming through your image. Let's dive in and see how we can work with these tints in your workflow. Once you've installed your actions, you're ready to use the colour tint actions whenever you want. This image has had a little bit of colour grading after I've added the elements, for example, the lady and the flamingo. But what I'm going to do is click on each tint and show you the subtle shifts that it can do in the changing of the colour cast or the hues. And again, it depends on your image or your photo that you're working with. Let's have a look at the Actions panel here. And I've got this in button mode. It's a preference for me when I'm working with my actions. There's 10 actions in here, and you'll see that they've got different names. A little pop, but the hint for what the colour tone is clean pop. It gives it a little bit of contrast or pop to the colour. The next one is richness. It adds some depth. But again, these are subtle colour shifts. They're not very deep contrast colours. The next one, Blue River, adds a bit of cool tone to an image. So, for example, if I have an image that's got a lot of warm colours in it, I might want to do what I call a colour balance and add a cool colour into it. And that's how I get the depth of colours in my image. The next one is Warmth, which adds a warm colour pop. Mud, rich brown tones, which I've actually used on this image in my workflow. Horizon is warm shadows, gives your shadows a little bit of warmth. Shiny gold gives a gold glow, and sugar, a creamy warm colour tone through. Coolness gives a cool colour, it's very light. And then vintage brown, which adds those vintage brown tones through. Each tint or action will change or subtly shift your image. Over on the Layers panel here, I've added each action in, and I'm going to turn the layers on and off, and you can see the subtle shift in colour. So let's go on to the first layer, click here, and you can see again a subtle shift. I'll turn that off. The next one is a coolness. I'll turn that on, and that gives a little bit more of a bluey tone. Let's go to the next tint action. I'll turn that layer off. The next one is Colour Tint Sugar. I'll click on that, and let's have a look at what sugar is. If I look at it up here, it's a creamy warm tone. I'll turn that layer off and on, and it gives a subtle warm tone through that image. I'll turn that one off. Shiny gold. Let's have a look. It says it's adding a gold glow, and it's again a warm tone or warm base to work with. The next one is Horizon, another warm colour, just to give a little bit of subtle hint of those warm tones. The next one is Mud, and the mud will actually add a bit of a rich brown to the tones. I would use this on something that could be like a forest or a landscape where I want some brown tones coming through. Even on a sunset, you could use that where it just softens those bright orange colours if you want. Let's turn that layer off. I've got warmth. Then I'll turn on to the next one, Blue River. Blue River adds a cool depth. This is more of a deeper blue, and this really makes this vintage tone pop for me, and I quite like that. Let's have a look at richness, and richness gives some depth. It's all about subtle colour shifts. I'll turn that layer off, and the last one is a little pop. Now, I would use that when I just want to give a little bit of contrast to an image, particularly if I've done a number of textures or I've added some different adjustment layers like levels and curves. These tints are designed to give that subtle colour grading shift through your image, particularly if you want something that looks a little bit arty or vintage in the colouring. Some of these tints would work beautifully with that. Even for landscapes, seascapes, you could use it on architecture. These are designed to give a speedy way of doing colour grading. Have fun being creative.